Ukraine's membership in the European Union is not a priority for Hungary during its EU presidency. Moreover, Kyiv and Moscow should negotiate a ceasefire. Viktor Orban's latest speech in the European Parliament sparked a wave of emotions among the audience. Supporters of the Hungarian Prime Minister greeted his controversial statements with applause and songs. He repeated these points during the press conference following the meeting.
The Hungarian intention is focusing on to manage a ceasefire as soon as possible. A ceasefire. Because we are convinced that you cannot win that war on the battlefield. Simply you cannot. That's our opinion. So therefore, if you cannot win on the battlefield, you have to communicate, you have to negotiate, you have to have a ceasefire, and you have to save the life. So that's what we would like to have.
This is typical right-wing populism, which is not only present in Hungary, it is gaining traction elsewhere, as evidenced by the AfD in Germany receiving significant support. We also have a right-wing government in Italy, but we see that after coming to actual power, their stance has softened. We can attitude this to so-called election rhetoric, although there are no elections in Hungary right now, and the domestic audience needs to hear that their representative is consistently advocating for their rights in Brussels.
At the same time, Orban's remarks about Ukraine's alleged inability to defeat Russia on the battlefield caused outrage among supporters of Kyiv. Ursula von der Leyen criticized the Hungarian Prime Minister for his sympathies toward dictator Putin amid the war crimes committed by the Russian army in Ukraine. According to the President of the European Commission, the only path to peace is to continue providing political, economic and military support to Kyiv.
The world has witnessed the atrocities of Russia's war. And yet, there are still some who blame this war not on the invader, but the invaded, not on Putin's. There are still some who blame this war not on Putin's lust for power, but on Ukraine's thirst for freedom. So I want to ask them, would they ever blame the Hungarians for the Soviet invasion in 1956?
In addition to Viktor Orban's controversial remarks, Hungary has obstructed the European Union's plan to freeze Russian assets for 3 years, as opposed to the current practice of renewing every 6 months. Consequently, the possibility of granting Ukraine a 35 billion euros loan is now also in question, as the funds were intended to come from the interest on frozen Russian assets. Explaining their decision, Budapest this time referred to the upcoming election in the United States.
They cannot completely block, so to speak, the cancellation of Russian sanctions. He does not address this directly. He formally supports the extension of Russian sanctions, but he only states that this should be done immediately after the US elections, which is considered somewhat inappropriate for European politicians to discuss, because in Europe, people decide everything themselves. What do US elections have to do with it?
This is not the first time Budapest has blocked EU assistance to Ukraine, and the Hungarian government has expressed negative views on Ukraine's prospects for EU membership. Meanwhile, Kyiv's Western partners are exploring ways to circumvent Hungary's vetoes, including the allocation of more than 6 billion euros in aid to Ukraine. On condition of anonymity, Bloomberg sources familiar with the discussions within the EU indicated that Brussels is considering allowing EU member states to make voluntary contributions to the European Peace Fund. Reported by Serhiy Kulyas, Larisa Petruk, UATV News.